Okay, so in this lecture, I want to talk about forgetting. The previous lecture, we were talking about imperfect memories and yeah, misinformation. But here I want to talk about forgetting and maybe get into some amnesia. So Ebbinghaus, this is an illustration of Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve, and this is in fact a quiz question. And what Ebbinghaus observed or theorized was that, or concluded from the data, I should say, was that, well, you can kind of see it, that the majority of forgetting happens within the first couple hours, right? Actually, within the first 2 minutes, or the first 20 minutes, you're gonna forget about 60% of what you pay attention to. This is a quiz question, right? So first of all, we have to pay attention to it. Remember the chapter on consciousness, you can't remember anything that you're not attending to. Going back to the chapter where we were talking about brain structures and neurotransmitters, the neurotransmitters implicated in learning are also implicated in arousal, right? Because you have to be alert and pay attention if you're going to remember anything. So assuming that you've paid attention to 100% of what's happening, within 20 minutes, you're going to have forgotten 60% of that because for various reasons, you're going to have forgotten it. But by the next day, and this is what the quiz question asks you, how much will you remember of what you heard today tomorrow? So by tomorrow, by 24 hours from now, how much of this lecture will you remember? And the answer is only about 20% of what you paid attention to. So if you paid attention to all of it, the majority of people, most of us, will only be able to remember 20% of what you paid attention to. So you know, that can get a little disturbing if you think about you're listening to a lecture and it's, 50, 60 minutes long and you're really only paying attention for 20 minutes and then you're only going to remember 20 minutes of that 20 minutes. That's a whole lot of lecture that you're not going to remember. And it also, I think, explains very well why you might need to watch a television show. Like, a fun sort of discussion question is how many times do you watch the same television show before you don't see anything new? And it takes us several times to do that. Well, that's because, if it's a 30-minute television show, you're going to have forgotten most of it anyway. So every time you watch it, then you're going to remember, you're going to notice things, and it's going to stick to other memories you have of that show, and it may take you 5 or 6 times before you actually, 7 times, right, before you actually remember anything. So that is Ebbinghaus's memory curve, 20% of what you paid attention to. Well, there's various reasons why we might actually forget, and a couple different theories, and most of them really revolve around that they're not encoded, right? So most of our forgetting is not so much forgetting as we never remembered it. We never processed it deeply, and we never processed it deeply enough because it's all at that superficial processing, right? Well, one theory says, you got this interference theory that says that new information interferes with old information. So there's 2 kinds of interference theory. One of them is retroactive and one of them is proactive. And I'm not going to quiz you about them, keeping them straight, but do understand, that interference theory simply means is that when you get new information, that it's either the old makes it difficult to remember the new, or the new makes it difficult to remember the old. And sometimes we sort of get them mixed up, right? Retroactive, what does it say? You call your new girlfriend by your old girlfriend's name. We do that all the time in our house with our dogs, but our dogs also kind of look alike. So the fact that we call the one we have now, his name is Beast, the fact that we call Beast Pete, that now remember Freud would argue that these were slipping out. These Freudian slips were somehow that I don't know, had preference for Pete over Beast. I don't know. Then proactive is the one where, what's it say? Knowing your current number, but forgetting the old. But again, it's the idea that old and new information gets confused. There are some theories, there are some who believe that you can actively, or that we can be motivated, we can try to forget, right? And there's considered to be 2 different kinds of trying to forget. One of them is, and there's not agreement as if this is a thing, but one of them is suppression. And suppression says is that we consciously choose to forget something. I think this is kind of curious, right? I mean, I guess in my mind, that if I am consciously trying to forget, doesn't that mean I'm remembering so that I can remember to forget? right? And then you have repression, and repression, and again, there's great debate about these things, but repression is the idea that that it's so dangerous for my psyche to remember something that I have forgotten it, that I unconsciously forget it. And you know, we could have a long conversation about the differences between these two. But I guess, you know, when I think about suppression, I think about mood congruence. That maybe that would be a form of consciously forgetting. Like, I know that that's going to cause me pain, and I know that if I start thinking about, you know, grief, the next thing I'm going to be doing is thinking about my father, and I don't want to be thinking about that. So I choose, I'm aware of, I'm making a choice not to get into that closet, so to speak. And repression could kind of be the same thing, where it's below, oh shoot, I had an example of that one too, unconscious forgetting. I forget where I was going, the example I was going to use of that one, but oh, I know, is that there is some evidence, especially in, like, when we get to the chapter on disorders, that our brains are programmed, they are built in a way that some things are simply not good, for us to remember, so that our brain prevents us from remembering these things. And there's some thinking behind, like, multiple personalities, but again, not all psychologists even agree that multiple personalities is a thing, right? But that's sort of the idea behind that, is that there's trauma that is so bad that it's the way that you are, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry, but it's the way that your brain protects itself, your psyche protects itself. So if we were in a class together, I would put this on the board and I would ask you which coin is the right one. And I've never had a class pick the right one. And so thinking about one of the other exercises that I asked you early in the semester, right, early in this chapter, I go like that because it's the front of the canvas. At the canvas thing, the earlier this canvas thing, like, I think it was, how many sides does a wooden pencil have? What words are on the back of a dollar? Like, why do we not know this stuff? Well, we don't remember this stuff because we never paid attention. It's not that you don't remember which coin is the right one. Did you ever, I mean, have you ever, and sometimes maybe if you're a coin collector, you know what the correct answer is, which is the coin. The correct one is this one right here, I think. I always know when it's on the screen, so I have to kind of imagine. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's this one. I forget. Oh my gosh, I forget which one it is. I forget which one it is. It's this one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's this one. But why do we not know? We don't know because we've never really paid attention. And that's what really all this is saying, is that most of our memories are not that we've forgotten. Most of our memories are that we never remembered it. It never got to deep memories. Okay, so in this slide here, we're talking about different kinds of amnesia. And so amnesia is just considered like profound memory loss. And a couple things that I want to point. Oh, that's a fun discussion question. So there's actually, I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to talk about that in the next video lecture.